makes this known through the most hilarious little merge you've ever heard. So hopefully that story makes you smile if you actually get to hear it. And if not, hopefully we're synced already. So, good morning, my friends, or whenever you're tuning into this replay. I'm Safriana Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide, and I have been participating in an 11-day visibility challenge, and that is part of why I've decided to go live here on Substack. And of course, I know that this video ends up on YouTube, and I've been trying to share them elsewhere too, because what I'm talking about this week and putting myself out there visibly is a huge cutting edge for me. And I know it's really, really important as I move into my own next chapter. This visibility challenge with Samia Phoenix has really helped me understand that when it comes to visibility, I have no problem telling the personal stories. I have no problem being real with y'all, showing up with my messy hair and, doing little rolls on my bed and, you name it. I'm really here just being me and shining my light. But I've really come to recognize this deep fear of sharing things that have a monetary value behind them, something behind a paywall, such as my books, my offers, my courses. I've really seen that my growth edge is actually sharing about those. So today I want to talk to you about something that I really love about myself and am really proud of in myself. And that is my writing endeavors and my poetry projects. And in particular today, I want to talk about A Woman's Work, which was my debut poetry book. And this edition is actually the second edition. So first, I'll just share a little bit of a story about the two editions. So here is the original, and here is the second edition. So the second edition I published at the very, very beginning of 2025, very shortly after President Trump came back into office. And that's important because I'm going to get into some spicy stuff here today. And I'm going to read a little segment for you from this regarding shit that needs a spotlight shined on it. But I decided to re-release this for a few reasons. So first, you can just see, I have all my sticky notes from times I've gone and read it at events. You can see that the two copies are very different sizes. And that is because in the second edition, I added a ton of essays to the end. There's no new poems, but there are essays. So, A Woman's Work was my debut poetry book. It's a memoir in poetry. And originally, this was born out of, I think it was like a 21-day challenge. It's been long enough now that I've started to kind of forget the fine details, but I believe it was a 21-day challenge where you would write 21 poems in 21 days or collect 21 poems you've already written, and you would submit it and they would print a book for you. And this was actually the original cover that I designed for that. And it was just, Canva art, and nothing wrong with that. It's pretty. I submitted it. I got it back from the 21-day contest, not contest, but challenge thing. And they were like, yeah, we're good to go. And we're going to publish the book. It was literally like $50. They're going to publish the whole volume for you. And they sent me the layout, and the poems were laid out incorrectly. And of course, because they're charging $50 in a little challenge to just put a book out there. So I understood that. But it immediately made me realize, okay, this is about more than me getting my voice out there and more than me sharing poems with the world. This is about me putting a book out that I can be really proud of and I can stand in the power of, and that I'm really feeling like I've expressed the parts of me that need to be expressed. Like, for example, this is probably the shortest poem in the book and it's untitled, but you can see the layout here is not like, it's not just standard copy paste print layout. So when I got the proof back from this company, it just didn't look right. And so I took matters into my own hands. By this point, I had already published Bumblebees and White Balloons, and I'd been through the whole process of editing and layout and design because I had actually taken a great self-publishing course from my friend Jess Verrill, who I've been in, gosh, I think I'm on my fourth book with her now for collaborative books. And so I had kind of gotten the knowledge. So it's just like, I'm going to do the poetry book on my own. I formatted it. I published it. It was well received. I was really proud of it. And then I didn't really market it more, as is tradition that I am trying to break, the pattern I'm trying to break. And so I then later, and I'll share more about the second poetry book in an upcoming live, but I published a woman's work. And then about 6, 7 months later, I finalized and published Daddy's Girl, which is like the second half of the poetry and memoir. So a woman's work really focuses on my experiences as a girl growing up in America and dealing with surviving sexual abuse and domestic violence. It's a very nitty gritty text of the realness, the rawness of what happens when we endure and we survive these horrible things. And it's very much a feminist work. It is very much a calling out the bullshit work. And so when I think about what I love about myself and what I'm proud of myself for, it's that I stand in the power of my voice and I do not sit back and pretend that the bullshit that humans do to one another is okay. I refuse to sit by silently and pretend that these atrocities don't exist. I refuse to sit silently and disbelieve victims and survivors of sexual assault and violence, right? It's, I love that about myself. I love that I don't just sit and stay quiet in it. And I used to, right? So much of a woman's work is exploring the impact of sexual trauma and the impact of being told that you don't matter and that you are small and worthless. And so many people in the world, especially women, especially people of color, especially queer folks, are taught that we are lesser than, that we're not important, and that the things that happen to us don't matter. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And, this book it's raw. It's got a lot of real lived trauma woven into the poetry, but it also brings hope. There is also an upliftment in it. And in the essays too, I really try to leave the reader with some hope that it can be better, that it can be okay. And it also has some of my artwork in it. So I'll just show you just a little teaser. It's got some of my artwork in it just to kind of space the book apart. So I wanna I wanna share the dedication, and I wanna read a little bit of the essay from the back for you, because more than ever today, I'm feeling the spiciness of this book and that it is needed in the world. And that's because of everything going on with the Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein files, and all of the shit that we're seeing right now. I am like absolutely appalled that there is a podcaster out there, Megan Kelly, who is trying to make the argument that it's not as bad because Epstein and company were more into like 15-year-old girls, the almost legal. I don't remember exact words, but I think she said barely legal type. They're not legal. They're not adults. They are not women. These are girls. 15-year-olds are not capable of making their own decisions when it comes to relationships with older people, especially older men. And it just pisses me the fuck off, if I'm perfectly honest, that we are even having these conversations in our society right now, because we should be well beyond this. We have the brain science. We have the actual data about how we develop as human beings, and we are not capable of abstract reasoning and understanding love and intimacy until we are at least in our mid 20s, which is not to say that 18 is legal. Yes, if you want to toe that line and play that line, sure, 18 is legal. But is 18 mature? No. When we're all 18, we think we know what the world is all about. We think that we're mature, but our brains are still developing. So to be making arguments that, well, they're not into 8-year-olds. Well, actually, they probably are also into 8-year-olds, because I was a survivor and victim that my grooming began at 8 years old and continued until I was 15. And then went on to perpetuate more sexual violence because I had been groomed and already endured those things, and it was normalized and nobody said a damn word. So this stuff really gets me fired up. And the fact that we are still dragging this on, that we are still not listening to the voices of victims and survivors, it just drives me bonkers. And of course, there's just everything happening in the world right now. So I want to read from a woman's work for you. This is an essay. This is part of the essay in the back. called Persistence as Resistance, Breaking Cycles of Trauma and Power. And I am not going to read all of it to you, but I do want to say that, in the first part of the essay, I talk about personal trauma and the political mirror and how what I'm seeing play out in the world today on the macrocosmic scale is a prolonged assault on the planet, animals, and humans, and how power is twisted towards those with money. And I go on to talk a little bit about how who I call the Reaper, my childhood groomer and abuser, really, really is a big MAGA fan. He's a big Trump fan, and how this mirrors a lot of what too many people want to accept and want to see reflected in their leadership are these unspeakable, horrible things. And so I'll just read from this one little section. For survivors like me, now bear in mind, published this in like February 2025. Yeah, it was like February, March 2025 that I republished the second edition. So I wrote, for survivors like me, knowing my abuser waves that Trump flag proudly is like watching him flaunt his own immunity. As a racist white Christian nationalist man, it is a reminder that in America, power and privilege still win over justice and truth. And so this book, I said I'd read the dedication. I dedicate this book to all survivors of childhood abuse, neglect, domestic and intimate partner violence, and human trafficking, as well as those who did not survive such atrocities. So, this is about atrocities and human atrocity that needs to stop. So I wrote, it's a special kind of madness watching one abusive person idolize and worship another abusive person, a spiral of power and control, multiplying, compounding. Each time we elevate yet another perpetrator, lifting them up and ignoring the real experienced trauma, we are submerged deeper into the shadows of despair, bypassing, and karmic swirling. Something has to change. And so I'm going to just read this whole section that I wrote on the crisis today because it's only deepened. And this is where, what I love about myself is I refuse to stay silent in the face of it. So the crisis today, 2025. I truly believe that the patriarchy is in its death throes, but they're biting back hard. In America, a want-to-be emerging dictatorship is wreaking absolute havoc, chaos that doesn't just impact people in our country. Talk of war, alliance shifts, and market instability don't just affect the United States, as this regime's actions have worldwide consequences. If people don't step up and do what's right and just, the toll will be far more devastating than we can imagine. The cost of silence is steep, and I refuse to participate in allowing atrocities to go unchallenged. I'm glad to know I have stayed exactly the same in terms of my willingness to speak up. We are in an active war on everyone who is not an able-bodied, Christian, cis, heteronormative white male. The powers that be are targeting femininity, women, trans and queer people, brown, black, and indigenous people, bodily autonomy, sovereignty, self-expression, information and education, the disabled, the abused, and the marginalized. In January of 2025, the United States swore in a convicted sexual abuser, President Trump, for his second term. In just a few hours in office, he openly declared an attack on anyone who doesn't fit into that mold by signing executive orders prepared by Christian nationalists laid out in Project 2025. These orders overwhelmingly harm many people, documented and undocumented immigrants, naturalized and birthright citizens, LGBTQIA+ people, especially trans people, DEI professionals, environmental professionals, veterans, and more. Under the cover of aiming to get violent criminals off the street, the order instead allowed people with no criminal records to be profiled, while he simultaneously pardoned people who actually have a documented, proven criminal record of violently assaulting police officers and others during the events that transpired on January 6, 2021. Not to mention, he pardoned Ross Ulbricht, another white man who founded the Silk Road, which is associated with drug and human trafficking. With many of his executive orders, he has also laid the foundations that are precursors to forced pregnancies, forced labor camps, the banning of certain personal identities and expressions, slashing of support for the disabled population, and the destruction of our environment. Again, this was written in like January and February of 2025. It's only gotten worse. And so I write, I hope for an entirely different outcome, but I would regret not laying out what I see plainly should it come to pass. In February of 2025, things only escalated further. Elon Musk is planning to put keyloggers on federal computers and monitor everything done by certain employees in an attempt to make sure that there are no whistleblowers, full loyalty to Trump, and no one to snitch on the highly illegal things that the Doge team is doing. The Reaper, again, my childhood abuser, the Reaper himself put a keylogger on my computer when I was a kid, in case I told anyone about the abuse. I had to speak in code in later years when I tried to share what happened to me with friends, similar to the obfuscating language used presently on TikTok and other social platforms like Dior for drones or winter boots for ice, to try and get around the censorship algorithms trying to keep information out of the hands of the vulnerable. Musk has ordered his cronies to cut off jobs for countless people in the name of efficiency while creating contracts and circumstances that benefit himself. He has cut funds for some of the most vulnerable all over the globe. He aims to slash many of the assistance programs that protect and serve Americans. And we're seeing more and more of that happening right now. The abusers in chief are emboldened because they know the system has been built to serve them rather than hold them accountable. Every illegal action, every firing, every power grab, and misappropriation is added to the pile of an overwhelmed set of checks and balances. While our current president makes promises of financial prosperity and abundance, it remains as of this writing unseen. It still remains as of this reading unseen. Our costs of groceries are crazy right now. And we're so grateful to be homesteaders and have some frozen goods and such that we have grown ourselves because have you gone to the grocery store lately? Um, so it remains as of this writing unseen. My concern is that this promise will only manifest for those already in power, those already with money, while the rest of us, hardworking, everyday, average Americans, go without food, homes, or health. No external figure is coming to save us. No president, pope, boss, pastor, teacher, guru, or any other external authority figure is going to solve our problems. It is in our hands to build the world we want, not in the hands of our politicians, very few of whom actually know the average daily struggles of the American people. And this is why I fight for people like Dr. Melissa Bird to end up in office. It starts with us. It starts in me. It starts in you. You get to choose to be the change you want to see in the world. No matter who we vote for, who we love, what God we pray to, or how we want to live our life, I know we can be good, kind, and whole people. So this essay goes on to talk about hope and resistance and, my hopes for the future and what we can do. But we're still in the cesspool of absolute bullshit where we are excusing the assault and abuse of young girls and boys, where we are continuing to allow the perpetuation of violence on minority status people, where we're sitting back, so many of us, and staying quiet and not fighting back against these horrible, horrible things. And we absolutely can't let that happen. We cannot allow it to be normalized that men just, are attracted to 14, 15-year-old girls, and that because we got married hundreds of years ago to underage girls, that it's okay now. What? This stuff just blows my damn mind that we're having these conversations. But in this era where we're seeing what's happening with the Epstein files and how much protection we will grant to pedophiles is just plain ridiculous. So I will continue to shout to the rooftops about these things and to continue to write and share. And I just want to say, if this book interests you, again, it's a doozy because it really is unpacking surviving trauma and abuse and what growing up as a girl in America looks like. It's raw, it's real, but I'm so proud of this book. It is really, truly the first unveiling of my soul on a personal level. So you can go to safriana.com and click books, and you can find a signed copy there. You can go to Amazon and get a copy there. But I'd love if you wanted a signed copy that I would get to send you one. So I just drew a card for those of you who are on the fence about this book and what it can bring if you choose to move forward with purchasing it. And I pulled the stag, kindness. And I love this. I'm very into deer medicine. In fact, I have my deer bone wand sitting on my desk right now because it's such an important medicine figure to me. But this book really is about kindness. It ultimately is about giving ourselves more compassion and kindness and giving other people in the world more compassion and kindness who we might not know what they've been through. We might not know that they have survived some really atrocious things. When I think about sexual abuse and assault and the fact that we live in a world where pretty much 1 in 3 girls and or women have experienced some form of sexual harassment or abuse. And I bet the statistics are probably closer to like only 25% of people don't experience that. It's crazy. And then our actual molestation and abuse and assault statistics are insanely high. So we need a better world. We need a world that is kinder to our people and that does not perpetuate the cycles of violence that normalize these forms of abuse, because that's ultimately what it is, right? And I know after all of the work that I've done and the trauma therapist that I am, that the people who perpetuate, the perpetrators that perpetuate these forms of violence, that abuse young people, that sexually take advantage of people, they were probably wounded and abused in some way themselves, right? Hurt people, traumatize people. My childhood abuser witnessed his sister being abused and went on to abuse who knows how many people, right? The cycle of violence continues and we have to break it, which is why we actually need to learn to be more kind to ourselves and others. So, thanks for coming to my impromptu visibility challenge TED Talk on why everything going on in the world right now is bullshit. I stand with the survivors that are speaking up and out in the face of these records coming out. They're not really probably going to come out, right? There's going to be some form of blockage happening here in the next few weeks, I'm sure. But the stories are coming out, and I invite you, even if it's uncomfortable, to listen to the stories, because that's how we start to change this trajectory. So check out the book if you'd like. I'll drop some links below with details on how to buy the book or download a free sample of the book, preview the book, etc. And otherwise, stay tuned over here as I continue to talk about these things and break free from the trappings of society, because that's what I'm here to do. So I love you so much, my friends. I see you, I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on as always. Until next time, bye for now.